Okay, so if you followed me for a while now, and you pay attention to some of the stupid shit that actually comes out of my mouth, you would know that my favorite character in the entirety of the Blue Lock series is without a doubt the lazy genius known as Nagi Seishiro. From the moment he was introduced, it was clear to both the reader and our main characters that Nagi wasn't average. His personality was quite odd, always seeming too lazy to even care about breathing, yet every single time he steps on the football pitch, he's on a completely different level than any single person around him without even trying. For the most part, even up to the current point in the manga, Nagi is held in high regard. I mean, he does have the current second highest valuation ranking in the entirety of the Neo Egoist League, and sadly for my boy, and it really hurts my heart to say this, he's been catching a shit ton of strays recently, and I feel like he's been getting way too much hate. I mean, it seemed like just yesterday when Nagi was the scariest player in the series, and keep in mind this was back in the first and early second selection, but since then, due to a multitude of factors from the rapid evolution of his fellow Blue Lockers, to the blatant skill gap presented in the form of New Gen 11 and world-class players, Nagi has had quite the fall from grace to the point where he's not even included on people's top 10 lists anymore, at least, when you're concerning just U20s. And as a stated Nagi Glazer, it is ridiculous to see the amount of hate that's being thrown his way, but I mean, at the same time, as much as it does hurt to do this, I'm not gonna mindlessly defend him for stuff that's just incorrect, you know what I'm saying? I can't just make a bunch of unwarranted claims, trying to back up Nagi when it's just not true. That's just not what I do, Daddy Clamp's not biased, guys. So with that made crystal clear, I want to take you guys, my beautiful subscribers, on a deep dive in not only the mindset, but the playstyle of Nagi Seishiro. The good, the bad, and everything else in between, so that by the end of this video, hopefully you'll have not only a better understanding, but a better appreciation for the lazy genius of Blue Lock. So with that said, the drill, grab some snacks, fill those cups, and I'm going easy today, so love you guys. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now, the first thing I want to take a look at is Nagi's mindset at certain points in the series. Nagi has always received negative reception for not showing any emotion due, obviously, to his laziness. But if you chalk it up to the fact that he just doesn't show emotions because he's a lazy character and that's just how he is, you just don't know the character very well. While Nagi himself may be lazy at heart, that doesn't automatically make him an emotionless robot, but it actually allows for Nagi's emotions to be showcased more throughout his play. From his first appearance in the manga to every single panel of his spin-off, Nagi has been shown to be one thing above all else, and that's lazy. Too lazy to work, too lazy to care, hell, too lazy to even eat at times. No matter who, what, and where he was, Nagi seemed like he could never be bothered. However, within the endless pages of laziness, we have glimpses of just what Nagi is truly capable of, not only in a physical sense, but on an emotional level as well. Not only when he tries on the field, but genuinely just when he cares. Nagi, as stated by Ryo, Isagi, Ego, Baro, hell, too many people to count at this point, is an overwhelming genius whose potential is bound only by his equally overwhelming laziness. But as we know, there have been moments, mostly coming from the Nagi spin-off, that showcase Nagi playing to his maximum potential. The earliest of these moments comes in Team V's game of tag. After his attempt at forfeiting his spot in Blue Lock, Nagi stepped in to save Ryo from certain elimination, trapping Zantetsu's shot prior to him making contact with Ryo, jumping back up in the air, and hitting an unreal turning volley, launching the ball back at Zantetsu, who managed to dodge, leading to Nameoko's elimination. 99% of the time, Nagi is doing nothing, almost as if he was completely useless to anyone and everyone around him. However, no matter how lazy Nagi may be overall, there will always remain that 1% when the true genius inside that lazy boy truly awakens. This example from the game of tag is simply the first instance of Nagi taking football seriously, something that we slowly begin to see more glimpses of throughout the first selection. From the throttling we see in the 8-0 victory against Team Y, to when he made not only the viewers, but all of Team Z shit themselves, we see as the latent potential stuck deep within the lazy genius slowly starts to creep out. But why is that exactly? What is the reason for someone so lazy to actually put in effort? Well, for the most part, when Nagi's actually shown going all out, it is shown being in direct correlation with Ryo. He only scored in early matches because Ryo told him to. When Ryo was distraught, it was Nagi who experienced an awakening in order to pull him out of that slump, and if it wasn't for Ryo, I mean, Nagi simply wouldn't be here. Like legit, he either would have left or wouldn't have come. As the story progresses, something starts to change inside Nagi. He begins to try in matches, not simply because Ryo tells him to, but because he wants to. Most of the time, he describes this as some weird, unknown phenomenon, as even he doesn't know why he's putting in the effort or even why his body's moving at the pace it is. Look no further than the match against Team X from Chapter 9 of Episode Nagi, where we see perhaps the first glimpse of egoism come from the lazy genius. And of course, this has to come at the expense of the king, Baro Shoei. From the jump in both the first selection of Episode Nagi and the second selection of the actual manga, Baro and Nagi were completely on side with one another. Like genuinely 90% of the time when the two are featured on the same page, they're most likely going to be shitting on each other. But throughout this rivalry, there's one exact moment I want to point to, and that will be Nagi's game-sealing goal against Team X. Throughout the match, even though Team V had the clear advantage, Baro was getting at it with Nagi, as their two mindsets are quite literally polar opposites. Like, I don't think there's two foils who go against each other's mindsets as much as these two, and no one really talks about it as much. It's definitely one of the more underrated rivalries in the entirety of the series, in my opinion, but that's besides the point. I'm waiting till the end of the Ubers match to cover Baro, as I fuck with his mindset and overall character heavy, almost as much as Nagi, but you know, not quite to the same extent. But I truly mean it when I say these two are complete foils of one another. Baro is disgusted at Nagi's lazy playstyle and complacency with not constantly giving his all to becoming the best. Whereas Nagi can't stand Baro's aggressive nature, the way he treated Rio, and how Baro simply looks down on every single person around him. Especially to him, as Baro called Nagi a slave throughout the entirety of the match. Wild. That is, until Nagi pulls off one of the most underrated goals in the entirety of the series, as to answer Baro's sudden goal, he charges headfirst at the king. Even Rio's taken aback by this, which kind of just puts into perspective how rare this is to see from Nagi. It's completely unlike Nagi to do something like this and take initiative, especially in a game like this. More so, he's choosing the most irrational and difficult route by targeting the team's #1 player. Immediately, Rio darts a pinpoint pass right to Nagi, who without looking back heel traps the ball, asking Baro, "Do you still think I'm boring?" Instinctively, Baro attempts to foul Nagi, grabbing under his arm to rip him down. However, underestimating the genius's deceptively large frame, Baro gets hit with one of the most disrespectful moves ever, as Nagi in response grabs Baro's jersey, slams the ball into the back of the net as he's parallel to the ground, and proclaims that Baro has failed as a king. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I know it's not the craziest goal, hell, it's not even Nagi's best goal, far from it, but that's not what we're focusing on here. The big takeaway here is not the skill required to pull off the goal, but actually the motivation for Nagi to challenge Baro in the first place, and the true nature of his egoism. After rereading and stumbling upon this moment especially, saying that Nagi doesn't have an ego is completely false in my opinion. Due to his pure distaste for everything Baro stood for, as well as the devious amounts of shit this man was talking, Nagi straight up said, "I'm not gonna stand for this," and got an immediate get back so preposterous that the most self-centered character in the entirety of the series acknowledged his ego. It's seeming to become more of a common thing for Nagi to actually do this. What I mean exactly is that we tend to see Nagi evolve through challenging his opponents. I mean, just look at the evidence. What I previously mentioned he did to poor Baro, add to this his Kingslayer in the 2v2, and he might have to start paying Miss Shoei's child support. And of course, when it comes to Nagi challenging his opponents, this is most prevalent in the case of our MC, the egoist himself, Isagi Yoichi. There are of course a multitude of options to choose from, such as his monstrous awakening in Team Z versus Team V, or even devouring as a teammate throughout the entirety of the second selection. Pause, but there's no better awakening to look at than what will mostly be the main topic of discussion from here on out, that being Nagi's 5-shot revolver. Easily one of the greatest goals we are ever going to see, the 5-shot is a truly jaw-dropping spectacle, spurred on by Nagi's desire to take down Isagi, the one he'd chosen to be his rival. Ever since he teamed up with him in the second selection, Nagi has seen Isagi as the one who's going to help him get better at football, not through guidance like Rio, but through defeating him. That's the whole reason he turned his back on Rio in the first place, the only person we'd seen him care for up to this point in the manga. Fast forward to the Bayern Munich and Manchester City match, where we see the return of Rio and Nagi's dynamic duo, something Nagi called for as he saw no other way of surpassing Isagi. Taking initiative and actually approaching Rio himself to improve his own play is something that the old Nagi never would have done. But due to the fact that he finally has a goal to pursue, that being defeating Isagi and all, he for the first time in his life was willing to put in the extra effort to get the job done. In the heat of the Manshine and Bastard match, the duo of Rio and Nagi are devastating the BM defense, blowing right by everybody with their perfectly placed passes and next level synergy. Rio sends one final pass towards Nagi, saying, "Go, my treasure," only for the path to be blocked by the dueling aces Kaiser and Isagi. All of a sudden, the entire aura of the panel changes, as we see Nagi's expression change as well, sending a back heel pass back to Rio, asking him for one more pass, as he charges straight for his rival, electing to make it a one-on-one encounter. Nagi traps the ball as he looks to shoot, but Isagi, who has achieved metavision at this point, could see right through that with ease as he's played alongside Nagi enough at this point. However, as he goes to play the two-stage volley, a move he's seen Nagi pull off once before, he gets outsmarted as Nagi jumps over him into the air, hitting another fake shot volley. Suddenly, Kaiser steps in to intercept, only for Nagi to yet again hit a fake shot volley, tipping the ball over the young prodigy's head. It's finally time to shoot, but Isagi's still in range to intercept as he jumps in the path of Nagi's shot, only to realize he was completely mistaken. Even with Metavision, the supposed higher plane of existence that puts anyone who has it on a completely different level than they were before, he couldn't stop this. Nagi hits one final fake shot volley as he proclaims that he is the best player in the world before jumping into the air and drilling an absolutely devastating shot past Gagamaru and into the back of the net. As he lands, we see Nagi act very out of character, letting out a huge scream before dabbing up Rio and hitting one of the hardest poses in the entirety of the series. An absolutely sensational goal that took the football world by storm. The moment when the lazy genius Nagi Seishiro truly awakened. Following this tremendous feat, one brushed off as a fluke by Ego Jinpachi himself, Nagi's mindset has returned to somewhat of what it used to be. After finally achieving his goal of defeating Isagi, he doesn't know where to go next, and that reflects in his play. After the 5-shot, both Nagi and Rio were basically completely shut down by Isagi, as his loss of inspiration wasn't enough to keep up with the rapidly evolving egoist opposite of him. I'm not sure what's next for Nagi as far as his mental evolution is concerned. Wherever he goes from here is completely based on his own effort at this point. I think we can all agree on that. And for the sake of everyone, they better hope that he stays motivated, because if this is the Nagi that you get every single time, forget about it. So now that we discussed Nagi's mindset, we have one more thing to cover, and that's going to be his scaling. His current skills and level compared to his professional peers, and simply just his overall skill level and ability at this current point in the manga. Now when talking about Nagi, some obvious strengths come to mind, such as his impressive frame, as he stands at about 190 centimeters tall, his outlandish scoring ability, and of course, his godly ball control. And I'm not talking about the one that Henri or your mom are good at. Taking a look at the stat sheet released by the author himself, we can see an even more in-depth breakdown of every facet of Nagi's play. Some of the highest overall kicking stats in the series, paired with surprisingly high numbers across all aspects of technique and mental fortitude, holding 90s or higher in so many statistics that it's hard to believe he's only a 92 overall. Real quick, I do feel like some of these stats legit make no sense. Like, how are you giving him only 85 agility when he's pulling off shit like this mid-game? But hey, you know, at least he has 93 kinetic vision, so go Nagi. We can take away some more important information upon closer examination of Nagi's play, both in the anime and the manga. Throughout the entire series, Nagi can be seen scoring goals with both feet pretty effortlessly. In instances such as the 5-shot and his back heel trap against Baro, Nagi is seen shooting with his left foot. As we know, the only openly left foot dominant players in the series are Kunigami and Zantetsu, and even if Nagi was left foot dominant, he's also scored a plethora of goals with his right, such as the U20 opener, his 2-stage volley, the Kingslayer, and many, many more. From this is where we can derive at least semi-ambidexterity in Nagi's favor, which in cooperation with both his ball and body control allows for Nagi's potential to score goals to increase tremendously. On top of his ambidexterity, Nagi has showcased acrobatic levels of athleticism and flexibility, contorting his body in order to trap the ball, get around the defense, or even just score some of the flashiest and most difficult goals in the entirety of the series with little to no difficulty. Obviously, in terms of his weaknesses, there are many glaring issues with Nagi's play that we need to discuss. The main issue obviously coming down to his IQ and game sense, as he really doesn't know much about football to begin with. The only category he holds less than an A in is defense. Of course, we haven't really seen him play in defense. Other than his defense, his IQ, and his game sense, the only other weakness I can attribute to Nagi would have to be his mindset, as it seems like if he's not trying to surpass Isagi, then he really isn't going to play to the best of his ability. And this has always been the most perplexing part about Nagi. As someone with this much talent, wouldn't you want to showcase it? Even with this though, I still think chalking it up as pure laziness is still incorrect. To be specific, Nagi operates on will. What is needed to kill a prey isn't the weapon or the skill, but the will to kill. This quote perfectly encapsulates Nagi's entire ideology, especially when it comes to football, as if he has no will to surpass a given opponent, then you won't really see what Nagi Seishiro is truly capable of. Okay, so we've highlighted his strengths, his weaknesses, we took a look at his mindset, we broke that down for you, and now what are we left with? Well, that's where he scales. And the answer is both simple yet complicated at the same exact time, and that's due to one feat. Of course, I'm talking about the 5-shot. Now, the reason there is so much controversy over the 5-shot is one that really pisses me off to no end, and that's Ego's statement following the goal, denouncing it as no more than a non-replicable fluke that doesn't measure the true talent of Nagi Seishiro. This single statement has somehow fueled Nagi neglectors so much to the point where they think it's justified ranking him below the likes of Nico, Yuki Miya, and hell, even his own teammate Chigiri. While some arguments can be made for Chigiri, and I'd wholeheartedly admit that, his speed is on another level, which attributes to his defense, and now that he's a replicable formula for scoring goals, he's more informed than ever. However, while you may be able to argue Chigiri over Nagi as an overall player is concerned, you can't say the same when it comes to his scoring ability and overall value as a striker. The 5-shot revolver, for those of you who are unfamiliar, as I broke down earlier, consists of Nagi performing 4 consecutive fake shot volleys on the 2 strongest Metavision users we've seen up to this point, one of which is a new Gen 11 player, and the other the main character of the entire show. Just have to specify that real quick. Before jumping into the air and drilling the ball past the best goalkeeper we've seen in the series up to this point and into the back of the net on the 5th volley. Forget what Ego said, and take the facts at face value. We already know Ego really can't stand Nagi, probably due to his overwhelming laziness, which is only matched by his talent. If this statement was never to leave Ego's mouth, then oh my god, I do not want to hear how bad Nagi would be getting glazed right now. If Ego never stated this, hell, I wouldn't be shocked to see people trying to say he's better than Kaiser, which is ridiculous. And like, it genuinely hurts my brain to try and fathom how some people can sit there and be all like,
well, Ego said he can't replicate it, so you can't use it.
Like, what? In what way has that ever worked in any sort of scaling? Whether it be Naruto, Dragon Ball, or hell, something as simple as a little Japanese boy scoring goals. A feat's a feat. And then on top of that, even if you were to downplay the goal, what can you say about it? The level of opponent is probably the highest we've seen anyone score against other than Bachira, Rin, and Shido's goals against the Ubers. Arguably, he was less assisted by Ryo than Shido was by Sai in the matter of Dragon Drive, as DD was a product of both Sai and Shido, whereas Nagi just needed Ryo to give him the ball. Now, I can't lie, with everybody getting Metavision nowadays and all the new Gen 11s popping up, it's a little bit hard to scale Nagi. However, upon my lengthy examination, as well as putting both my bias and my glazing aside, I can say that in my humble opinion, Nagi can highball to a lower new Gen 11 tier, with lowball placing him just outside the top 10 of U20s based on scoring ability alone. He's not on par with the likes of Isagi, Rin, Ryo, Bachira, or even Baro at this point yet, who at the moment are coming into their own roles as the true aces of each team, but he's sitting comfortably below them with the likes of Shido, Chigiri, Aiku, and even Kunigami. In my own personal opinion, this is what the top 10 currently looks like as of chapter 219, so make sure you take this with a grain of salt depending on when you're watching this. I think that placing Nagi either at the back end of the top 10 or even bordering the top 10 at the moment is passable, but as for a definitive answer, I'll say that this is exactly where the lazy genius Nagi Seishiro currently scales in Blue Lock. What's next for Nagi? I really don't know. I hope it's something big. Like I said, he is my favorite character, and he's probably going to remain my favorite character until the end of the series, unless, you know, someone gets like a huge awakening or good character development that I just like, but I don't see that. I don't see anything changing this. But yeah, I think that's all. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and sub up to the channel with noties turned on so you never miss another banger from myself. And of course, that's all I got for you today. Love you guys. Take it easy.